Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the writer of the upcoming The Six Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton at Image Skybound. It's Kyle Starks. Thanks for coming on, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's exciting to be here again.
So we're going to talk about Trigger Keaton and basketball a lot later on. But I want to start with like what the last year was about. Was like. I mean, we've talked about this for some articles I've done for Sketched. I know, of all the creators I know, you might be one of the most convention-oriented ones. And so not having conventions is like a huge loss for you. But I know previously you told me you were going to be doing a convention next month, June. How are you doing with everything now? Like that we're a little over a year later. Are you feeling like things are kind of starting to normalize a bit for you? Or is it still, meh?
In terms of like going to a convention?
No, just everything. Like, I mean, because you kind of had to refigure out your flow. You did like the Sticker of the Month Club. You did a free comic book day, improv comic, karate prom, a number of things during it that you might not have normally done. Do you feel like you're kind of figuring out the flow a year later?
No. The answer is no. I feel like, I don't know, man. This last year was crazy. All those things you mentioned, I felt like I had to pivot in a lot of ways. In the past prior to the pandemic year, the 3 years before, I was doing between 24 and 32 shows a year. So it's a lot of money loss for me. It also made it so I could do a lot of whatever I wanted to in terms of making books. If I had the money to do whatever I wanted to do. So this year, I sought out some for hire stuff. I did the Sticker Club thing. Sticker Club is funny because Sticker Club was intended so that I would have stickers to take to shows, and I had a way to fund me producing those stickers. So I started that, and it didn't work out, obviously. So it turned into me just making dumb stickers, which I'm going to take to shows. But it was intended to be for more show material, so I could take fewer books because I sell books at shows. Like, I don't sell art. I mean, I do, but I can't just take a sketch pad and a pen like a lot of people can, because I'm selling books. And it's like, you have to drag all that stuff out. And I thought, man, if only I could figure out a way to take less luggage and less weight.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sticker Club's been great. I think not this month, but last month I had 120, which doesn't seem like a lot, but for $5 each, it's a nice little bonus for us in terms of paying the bills, which is what we're trying to do here. This was my first year as a pro in comics getting money back from the government. That's how bad my year was, is that I got money back. I got money back this year. So we try and, I'm going to do the free comic book thing day again. I'm going to try not to freak out. Karate Prom was very exciting for me for whatever reason. I know what the reasons are. In the middle of the pandemic, I hadn't worked at all. I was pretty depressed, not doing shows. My time with Rick and Morty had ended, and I wasn't sad about that per se, but it's like I didn't really have any work, but we had money, and I wasn't really doing anything. And Free Comic Day, I thought was something that the industry needed, and it turned out that I needed it. It was the most fun I've had making a comic in a really long time. So I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to try not to do, I think it's like 36 pages I did in 10 days or something. I don't want to do that again. My wrist hurts so bad. But karate, I love Karate Prom. I did two more Karate Proms that are now out being shopped. So I have an agent who's shopping the Karate Prom trilogy.
Oh my God!
Around Planet Home for it. It turned out really good. I really love it. I one way or the other, if no one picks it up, which I'm optimistic someone will, I'm gonna kickstart it or do something. I don't know.
I love Karate Prom. I mean, I'm all about that. So I support the trilogy. It's like the Karate Kid, except for, I don't know, more fun in some ways.
Yeah.
I guess that might be blasphemy to some people, but I'm not a big Karate Kid guy. I like Karate Prom, though.
I think book agent said it was Karate Kid. No, he said it was Cobra Kai meets Scott Pilgrim. That's how he's.
Ooh.
That's a good. I'm like, I take that. That's good.
That's a really good pitch. That's so okay. You said 24 to 32 conventions, and you said that kind of allowed you to do what you want to do. So are you saying that basically like kind of conventions subsidize your ability to do like Rock Candy Mountain or like something like that?
In many ways, and I live in Southern Indiana, so it's really, the cost of living is low here. So a little bit of money goes a long way. So if there's an option, it just like, so I mean, I'm doing work for hire for these streamers who want to make a cartoon. I don't know if I can name names or talk anything. It's like, you know what? I probably wouldn't have done that last year. I probably would have done that in a normal year,
Right.
Because I've been fortunate enough to not have to do anything I didn't want to do. And this was also like I really sought out a lot of work. I have another book with Skybound I'm working on. We put some feelers out for potential pitches, and it's like I've never done that in the past. In the past, I've always just been like, I'll do this, and I'll either kickstart it and then find a home for it. I don't love it. I don't think anyone likes pitching, but I just like more like not having the freedom just to make what I want to make and then deal with how people will receive it. And I've been really lucky, and I'm in a position right now where it's the same, and having that sort of freedom is so important. But yeah, the convention money, I joke the convention money is my wife's income, so she doesn't have to work, and that means anything I make from comics, which was at the time a monthly Rick and Morty book, Mars Attacks,
right,
whatever, it's like that allows me to then do Old Head. Mm-hmm. That allows me to do whatever dumb thing I just want to do, because it's like, and I work fast too, so that's a bit of it too. It's like if I get 2 months or 3 months, maybe I can just do whatever I want, and that's optimal for me. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to get back to that, but I have been, I've been doing a bit more writing than drawing, and there's a lot of freedom in that too. It's a different kind of work. Like for when I make my comics, I just do them. But when I'm writing for someone else, it's a different process.
Well, I have to imagine, considering the fact that so many of your, I'm trying to think if any of your works would not be described as comedic in some capacity. Like,
yeah,
I can't imagine, no offense, I can't imagine you writing like a Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips type graphic novel or something like that.
I'm writing a horror comic right now.
Are you? Is it funny though?
It's probably charming.
Okay, charming.
It's charming, but no, it's not. It's very stressful.
You mean, is it stressful because you can't put comedy in it, or is it stressful because like trying something new?
I've done horror stuff. I've done horror stuff before in short form, and it's funny. If I may speak openly,
please,
David,
please.
About the challenges and the mental issues I've had. I've only done comedy, and I love comedy. I love comedy action more than anything. It's my favorite thing. It's my type of stories I like to tell. I just love it, and I feel like comics should be fun. And for too much of my life, they weren't. And I know, like the mainstream consumers don't want that per se. So it's been kind of a struggle. And after, what was my last thing? What I'm looking at? Assassination. Nobody read that. Very few people read that. I don't want to say nobody, but it's like I've seen the sales numbers,
Yeah.
And it's like I thought that would be kind of a big break. I thought more people would read Mars Attacks, which I think is one of the best things I've done. Like I know it's Mars Attacks, but I don't like who cares about Mars Attacks? Like I wrote a really good book that I thought more people would read because it was attached to a license that I thought a different. No one read it, and I really sort of had a crisis. This is over last year. I was like figuring out, well, no one's reading. No, my comedy isn't moving me forward, and I only want to make comedy. But my thing is more than anything, for me as a storyteller, I want people to be entertained, and I want people to read my stuff. So people not reading my stuff, and the thing is, like I was talking to Schweizer the other day, Chris Schweizer, who's my artist on Sidekicks and my artist on Mars Attacks, and my best friend. And he was saying, he was like, anyone who reads your stuff likes it.
Right.
I just had two big non-comics people sort of reach out to me and tell me they just read Sex Castle or they just read something else and they really liked it. And it's like, man, like it's true. If someone reads, but no one reads it, and it bothers me. And like, I spoke to Kirkman and I was like, I need work. Is there something I can do? And he's like, yeah, you should do this horror thing that you talked about once. And it's weird anyway. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, don't make it comedy. He's like, don't do comedy. And another editor to me was like, comedy's tough. And it's true. Comedy is tough. It's subjective. Though I would argue that the way that I do it is for everybody. I think I do a lot of different ranges of comedy. Six Sidekicks is maybe actually a little bit different than that. But I've always tried to put some dumb stuff in there and some obvious stuff and some stuff that's just for me. I try to cover a brace of it, but at the same time, it to be a cohesive entertainment.
Right.
So anyway, I love comedy, and I think, but I get it. One, there's not a lot of funny comic books. It's tough for a mainstream consumer to be like, I got to get a comedy book, because generally anything that pitches a comedy book isn't very funny. comedy itself is subjective, so not everything's funny to everybody. Like, I get it. So I thought I'd try something new. What's funny is, like, I've been writing this book, and it's been very stressful. I love Skybound, but there's some things that can be sort of a pain to work with. And while this is happening, and Six Sidekicks was, in a lot of ways, kind of the book that made me think, like, this is a bad idea. Because Six Sidekicks is very much a character dialogue-driven type thing, and the character stuff is more subtle. I really wanted to do something different at the time. I wanted to do a comedy action mystery. In my opinion, there's not very many of those. I thought maybe it was the only one, but then someone said Hot Fuzz, and you're right. Hot Fuzz is definitely a comedy action mystery. But I thought we'd really try something different, and not to be just because I thought it would be interesting.
Yeah.
And Schweizer's so good, and I knew Schweizer to do it. But I was like, man, this book, no one's gonna. It's just too much. Like, or it's too weird. It's too off. And now, since then, everyone's saying nice things about it. I've had publishers reach out to me because of the buzz on it. A lot of my creators, but I mean, I think creators are always get what I'm doing, and I don't know if mainstream consumers do, which also I don't like, because I want everyone. But also, you always made it the audience anyway. So it was so stressful working on Six Sidekicks, just because I wasn't getting the sort of like attaboy responses, and the editorial could be rough. Though I probably didn't listen to most of it because I'm problematic that way. But it's like, man, maybe I should be done with comedy. But now I'm doing this horror book, and I'm getting a lot of buzz on the last one I wrote. And I'm like, well, you know, I kind of prefer doing that, but we'll see. I'm trying to do stuff. Like, I'm really interested in doing other things. I like horror because it's comedy. Just it's not funny. It's just like the opposite of funny. But it's the same. It's the same rhythm. It's the same beats.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out. But it's stressful because it's like, man, I have to put this thing in the world. And my confidence, I wish my confidence was higher, but I think it's gonna be really good. I think all of it's gonna be really good, hopefully.
Yeah, it's funny. I've recently been struggling with like writing my stuff, and I think I've like thought about it in, I don't know if you're familiar with this term from baseball, because I know you're more of a basketball guy, but in baseball people get the yips, where they have like the inability to like a second baseman all of a sudden can't throw to first. What's that?
It's a golf term, I think. I think it came from golf.
Yeah. So I feel like I've had the yips for a while, where it's just like I don't know what good is anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's imposter syndrome. It's the same thing.
Yeah. And I kind of, I mean, I'm not saying that you have that, but I do think it's interesting. It's a very comic book thing for action comedies to be like this not typically successful idea, given the fact that movies, I mean, even like comic book movies themselves, the most successful ones are fundamentally action comedies, but comics themselves, people are like, I don't know about that. It's really strange to me. I mean, it's especially given the fact that like so many of your stories are, you know, like Sex Castle is like an 80s action comedy. I mean, like that is, you're working off of the ideas of one of the most successful stretches in the history of action comedies, and sometimes people are still like weird about it. I don't know. I just find sometimes comics are kind of backwards. Not to besmirch the entire medium/industry, but it is weird.
I mean, the consumers, it's just a different lot, man. It's just a different lot.
Yeah,
and it's just like web manga is like just the consumers. Consumers want what they want. It's very specific, and there's room for people like me who want to make another Hitman comedy book.
Yeah,
but it's like I don't know. It's tough because like the thing is like, you know, I've optioned everything. Hollywood loves it. And I feel like once they make something, hopefully there'd be some backtracking, and then maybe, you know, people will be like, oh yeah, he does great things. But it's just the way it is, man. It's just, you got to find your spot. And, you know, I look at guys like Chip, who started off and did comedy for so long, and they were able to transition. Not that I want to transition,
right?
But I'm not I'm interested in trying different things. But now that it's like things are sort of picking up on old comedy things I did, I'm like, well, maybe I'll just do this one thing. My concern is like I'm writing this thing and it's good, because it's horror and because it's a theoretical ongoing, which I've never done. Like the pacing's so weird to me, and I'm not quite getting 100% in that I want. Though I think by issue 4 it might be rolling the way I want it to. It's not the yips, because I know it's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's the matter of, will anyone read it and think it's good, or will it be like, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
And also horror comedy, I think there's a lot of horror stuff, and it's like, you know, we'll see.
We'll see. But Okay, so I did want to ask before we move on to Trigger Keaton. Again, conventions were a big part of everything. I know you're doing a signing at Challengers on June 9th for the release of this. Shouts to Patrick Brower, who emailed me and was like, mention this or die. Just kidding.
I love
didn't say that.
Yeah, Challengers.
But anyways, you're doing it with Chris, right?
Me and Schweizer are going to drive up. Right after. It's literally the Wednesday after my first show since February of last year.
How you feeling about that?
I don't know. I'm fully vaccinated. I'm fully vaccinated. Everyone I know is fully vaccinated. My eldest daughter, she's 13 and just got her first shot. So by the time I get back, she'll be fully vaccinated. I've said, like, my thing with this show in June is I'm very interested in what it will look like.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have no idea. I don't think I will be comfortable. I go to the grocery store and I'm not very, very comfortable. They've done masks off in Indiana, but I'm still wearing my mask. I might wear my mask forever. I haven't been sick. It's great.
Yeah.
I don't know. I say that, but also it's like, once no one's wearing a mask, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. The Challengers thing isn't going to be all day. And I did a signing there with the Rickmobile many years ago, and they were very good about moving traffic. So I have no concerns about doing that signing in Chicago. Because it's going to be a couple hours in and out. I don't know how many hours it's going to be. I have no idea. If it's 5 hours, to me, that's nothing. But they move people in a way that I'm not uncomfortable about it. But it's like I think about New York Comic Con and how I can't see who's across the row from me. There's so many people.
Yeah.
Be very anxious. I probably won't do a big show this year.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm doing this show. Sure, I'm doing a show in Lexington for sure. Unless I go to this show and I feel like it's just untenable. Or if no one shows, like, what if no one shows up? What if no one has money? Like, people keep saying, like, oh no, people want to spend money. But it's like, what money? A lot of people didn't work for the last year. What money do they have?
Yeah.
Like, how do you go to a show and buy a drawing of Rick Sanchez from?
I mean, one of the weird things about conventions as they're coming up is it's like, there's like the worst case scenarios are no one shows up or too many people show up. And it's such an odd dichotomy. It's like there's like this little area in the middle that people want like it to exist at. But what's that?
Yeah. Be comfortable with. Like there's somewhere that it's right, and I don't know what that is.
Yeah. With Challengers, the thing is like, Patrick and Dal are gonna like run a tight ship. It's like, with some conventions where it's like, oh, come to our thing, and just like, you don't know where it's gonna land. Like I can't believe this. I was completely 100% out on conventions this year for sure. Not that long ago, and I don't know. I mean, I freaked out at PetSmart like a few months ago just buying cat food. So there's like, to a certain degree, there's that. But then just like yesterday, I was actually looking up press registration for Emerald City Comic Con. I don't know if I would do it, but I looked at it, and that is like a step in that direction. It is just really interesting where I feel like, no offense to Reed Pop, but I feel like I would trust Patrick over like a larger convention because to a certain degree, they're looking to make money, and I don't blame them.
Yeah. That's why I don't think I do one of those big shows. I know like the security was very good at the last two Reed Pop shows I did. They had us going through a different door, and they were checking everybody's stuff every day for safety, for weapons and stuff.
Right.
And now it's going to be a different concern. It's like, are they going to be taking temperature? I just can't imagine. I don't know. You know what? I'll let everyone else do that experiment until 2022.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. It's like, I'd love the money. If someone's like, it'll just be identical to your show in 2019, I'd be like, well, money-wise, I might have to do it. But it's just like, I'll let everyone else do it.
Yeah.
I'd rather work.
I think a lot of people are kind of just watching to see how it goes. And I don't know. It's interesting. I have to ask, like, during the last year, did you find that as you were kind of trying to figure things out that you were talking to a lot of creator pals like Chris or like Erica or whomever about like what could be next or like how things might change? I just kind of feel like you and Chris were probably just talking, and that's kind of where Trigger came from.
I mean, I talk to Chris every day.
Yeah.
He's legitimately my best friend. We say that we're virtual studio mates, which is very true. Like we bounce everything off each other. I do so many more shows than both of those two.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a peer. My belief is it will soon be back to a form of normal.
Yeah.
And when will that be? And I think if that's the case, like what will change? Nothing will change. People are just like holding their breath until here comes the dogs. This will happen at least maybe 2 more times. But them dogs, I love them. But boy, yeah, those are the things. Like eventually we'll be back to normal, and like, will we hold on? And you know what? Maybe it won't be back to normal. That's the real discussion, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to tell you, if we had this conversation, say 3 months ago, I'd have more opinions. I quit watching the news, man. Like I just quit watching the news. For the last month, I've barely been on social media. And the thing is, I have a wife and I have 2 kids, and I feel like I am the guardian of this house, that I'm the protector of this house. And part of that for me is that I have to understand what's going on. And I'm over it. Like, I just couldn't take it. I was just like, you know what? I don't need to know. We don't go anywhere. We don't go anywhere, and we don't have to do anything. So I just quit. I think everything will be back to fine. I hope that's the case.
Yo, everybody. I want to take a quick second to give a shout out to Macroverse. Macroverse is an exciting digital comics platform that makes next-gen comics custom crafted for your phone. Macroverse's comics utilize its unique tap story format, which ensures this isn't a PDF on an iPad or an endless scroll, but a designed for mobile experience where every episode is crafted to take advantage of this one-of-a-kind style. Macroverse is curated for quality, with every series they publish being something they believe deserves to be read by a massive audience. Think of it like HBO for comics, with over 35 titles and 400 episodes from names like Brian Stelfreeze, Juan Doe, Paul Scheer, and more. Check out Macroverse today by downloading the app on iOS or Google Play, and get started with a rotating collection of free episodes, or unlock the entire universe for just $4.99 a month, with half of all profits going to the creators themselves. And now, back to the show. I just think it's kind of interesting. Like, I was thinking about, like, you know, Karate Prom, and I was thinking about Old Head, and I was even thinking about, you know, 6 Sidekicks to Trigger Keaton, your new book with Chris, and it's just like, I don't want to oversimplify your process, and I don't want to do the where do your ideas come from thing, but
Sure.
I do think it's interesting that you, like, Karate Prom originated from like a 2-word prompt from Twitter that you're asking people for free comic book day book. And
I do it again.
I'm not saying that's where all of your ideas come from, but I sort of feel like your books are like fundamentally rooted in simplicity. Like, there's like a very pure idea at the basis. It's like, you know, the 20 best assassins protecting a mob boss, like your version of an 80s action movie. Trigger Keaton, I mean, it was described as Knives Out meets Once
Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And like that tracks. I mean, like, I feel like all of your books have very clear elevator pitches. And like, I guess that's kind of what I was getting at, is just like, I don't know, with a lot of your books, it's almost like maybe Chris comes to you. I mean, I think if I remember correctly, Chris came to you with the title, and then you guys just figured it out from there, right?
He also won the Karate Prom, because I did a vote.
That was him?
And yeah, Karate Prom was Schweizer. Number 2, by the way, was Wrestle Heist, which I think will be the next book I do for Kickstarter.
That's
Wrestle
really
Heist.
good.
Yeah, I love that one. That was from another friend, not just a Twitter follower, but someone else I know, my friend Cliff. So yeah, Schweizer did come to me. We watched Knives Out and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in the theaters together, because he literally lives like 45 minutes from me. So we go to the movies, what we did, pretty regular, if it's something we really thought we'd like. And he came to me and was like, hey, I have an idea for a book. It's called The 6 Sidekicks of Captain Karate. And I said, that name is dumb. But I was like, what if we did this? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, and we did this. And he's like, yeah. And he decided my version was better. So I would say Sidekicks in many ways was Chris's idea. Chris originally wanted all of the sidekicks to be on like one TV show. I don't know. I was like, it's dumb. Captain Karate's dumb. And I think he's going to post on his Patreon at some point, probably when the book comes out, of like, we had a whole discussion where it's me going, what about 6 Sidekicks of Jimmy Fattone? What about the 6 Sidekicks of Creepy McDogface? And he's like just going through names, and him going, no, I don't know about that one. And finally it's like, Trigger Keaton. He's like, Trigger, that's. And I'm like, yes, that's it. We're like, yes, that's the name. So yeah, I yes, I'd say usually my ideas, I like to think, I think you want something everyone can sort of broadly relate to. And then what I do is I try to make a lot of subtext no one notices. That's, for me, that's very complicated and deals with a lot of like real things. 6 Sidekicks is 100% just be writing a friendship book, but there's a lot about trauma and found families, and like that's the part that really interests me because that's what dictates the characters. But we made a bunch of good characters, a bunch of good dumb characters doing dumb things, and I love them. And hopefully people read it. But yeah, Chris and I go back and forth. I don't know if I've had an idea without Chris in some capacity. Even Mars Attacks, Mars Attacks, they came to me and they're like, "Do you want to do a Mars Attacks book?" And I'm like, "I don't know, not really." Like I was like, "Let me sleep on it, or if I come up with a good idea, then I'll do it." And that same day, I was in the shower and I'm like, "Oh, what if I did this? What if it's a father and a son and they're surviving? It's like the Martian attacking is in the background. It's actually these two guys kind of going through all the nonsense." So I said, "Hey, Chris, is this a good idea?" And he's like, "Yeah, tell him I'll draw it." And I'm like, "That's not how it works, dude. You don't just get it." But the editor on that book, Kevin Kettner, who's amazing, who I love, was like, "Oh, I love Schweizer. Let's get him in on the book." So it's like everything is me going, "Hey, Schweizer, what about this?" And we're two just wildly different people. So sometimes it's not fruitful to either of us, but that's very low percentage. I know if Chris likes it, then it's good. It's good to have a couple. Like Schweitzer's so good at narrative and form and the technical stuff, man. It's good to have a homie that you can run that stuff by. And I'm really lucky I have a few of those, which is probably why I don't like editorial so much, because people I think who know how to tell stories have already told me I did the right thing. So
I do like so in the press release for Trigger Keaton, Chris said, "Kyle and I are opposites in almost every way with extremely different artistic and narrative priorities, except for one that we share. We both want to do our very best work, and we want that to resonate with its audience. And that sentiment is enough for us to end up seeing eye to eye on things, and it helps turn our disagreements over story or its execution into a whetstone that sharpens it up into something that we hope we can be proud of." Most people...
Jesus, look at that code.
What's that?
God, slow down, Schweitzer. Give him one sentence,
I was going to say, most people, I would say that, that is a very, overly thought of concoction. But I've met Chris once. It was with, my wife absolutely loved his stuff when we stopped by your guys' tables at New York Comic Con last year. Or, excuse me, 2019. And I talked to you about basketball, and she just talked to him about, how much she loved his stuff, basically. And, I just remember getting as soon as I saw that quote, I was like, I kind of feel like that's how Chris actually, talks, maybe? That feels like my very limited knowledge of Chris. That feels like something he would actually say, and I found that to be not that you aren't clever or intelligent or anything like that, but you guys do have I don't know. I was gonna say Turner and Hooch, but that makes one of you guys a dog. But
he's the dog. He's the dog. He's the Hooch. I swear to God. Chris
Lethal Weapon. Let's go Lethal Weapon.
Sure. I don't know who's Murtaugh and who's Riggs.
I could see you saying I'm getting too old for this shit though. So I feel like that might make you Murtaugh.
It's probably true. I mean, he's a smart guy, man. But he's also the smartest. He's also the dumbest guy I know. So I don't know what to tell you. He's my best friend, man. We were talking about it the other day. We're literally we don't like any of the same things. We that's not entirely true, but he wants to make he wants to make these wooden statues, and who gives a shit? And of course I'm like, hey, basketball. He's like, who gives a shit? But he's nice about it. That's the difference too. He's nice about it, and I'm like, come on, man. Who gives a shit? Don't waste your time. We're just complete opposites.
Yeah.
He's Schweitzer's brilliant, man. That's my thing. Is I thought Mars Attacks. Schweitzer does kids books. He loves kids books because he likes dealing with a younger audience. I could care less. I say that, and doing YA for Karate Prom brought me so much joy that I really want to do that again. And I'm hoping to. I'm hoping that'll be the case. I'm hoping we sell Karate Prom and we sell something else. But yeah, I mean, he's smart. He wants to make kids books. He wants to make these bizarre wooden shelf things. He's Schweitzer, man. He's the best.
Yeah.
I try. He's literally my best friend. But yeah, we don't have a lot. We don't have a lot in common, but we hang out all the time. So
it reminds me of I don't even know why I ended up doing this, but I think I ended up reading the IMDb trivia page for Jimmy Stewart, and it was there was a section in there about him and God, whoever his best friend was. It was another I don't know. like another one, a notable Henry Fonda or something like that, some big actor from history. And apparently they like fundamentally disagreed on like everything to the point where they were used to getting fist fights, but they loved each other. They were best friends. And apparently they spent most of their older days just sitting in silence together, making wooden ships together. And I was just like, that's nice. I kind of like that. Better than the fist fights part. But not that you guys are fighting, but
No.
Okay, so let's get into specifics about the 6 Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton, your Image Skybound book that arrives on June 9th with your aforementioned pal, Chris Schweizer. I'm going to do the solicit. The world's most unlikable action star has been found dead, and his previous TV sidekicks are looking to solve the mystery. But how can you catch a murderer when almost everyone hated the victim? Now these sidekicks are going to learn what it means to be the stars of the show. That is, if any of them survive the Stuntman War. I've read the first 4 issues. I absolutely loved it. I just want to start by saying it's a very good sign that when I actually reread all the 4 issues last night just so I can make sure I was totally on point. I ended up taking about 20 emails of notes.
Oh, shit.
Just like things I want to talk about. Then I realized I couldn't because I was talking about things in the book. And
yeah, it's tough.
But I mean, I don't know. I think that's a really good sign. And that's like the thing about, I don't know. It's like, great action comedies stick with you, at least in part, because quotes and like the moments that really like stick with you and stuff like that. And the fact that I already had that many in those 4 issues is, I feel like that's a pretty good sign.
Good. I love to hear it. I'm telling you, man, like, I don't know if Skybound's, like, when Assassination was coming out, it was the most buzz, and no one read it, so I don't know what that means. But it was so exciting. It's very thrilling. So I can't tell if Skybound is just doing like the best job of hyping this book, or if like it's actually as good. Because like I said, like it's weird. It's a weird book to me. I love it, but it's like, man. So whenever someone says it's good, I'm like, yeah, I thought it was. I thought it was good.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's always the thing. Is I remember one time somebody told me that like I don't remember if it was a retailer or a creator, but somebody said like, you can't tell anything about how well a book is going to sell based off of internet buzz because there's like absolutely zero correlation between it. And that like seemingly largely is true. I mean, based off of my account, no slander to Xander Cannon, but you would think Kaiju Max was the most popular comic in the world. But
so good.
And it's amazing and it should be, but at the same time it isn't, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I just the thing about it is like there's just such clearly realized characters and archetypes and everything throughout. And I do think it's funny reading the press release and seeing the 2 connections you guys had. You had the Knives Out meets Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but then also Schweitzer mentioned 2 USA classics in Monk and Psych, and I feel like there's a push-pull there because like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the stuntman thing, Brad Pitt's character totally fits this world. But at the same time, I kind of feel like the Monk and Psych thing is more apt.
It's kind of a blue sky mystery. You know, we threw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in there because when we saw both of those movies, and what we really liked about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was more going through sort of this character's life through shows and movies.
Yeah.
Like, not the Manson, like that part with like the friendship with Brad Pitt, like that was the part that I'm really referencing when we make that correlation.
Absolutely.
He had some. I guess that at one point we were going to do like one of those Moonraker scenes where they're like fighting through a set. So like each scene, which doesn't really happen, unfortunately, because the story just demands certain things. Like they fight through a Hollywood set in issue 4, but it's not quite the same. Schweitzer did some interesting form things as he does sort of through the whole series, I think, on issue 4. But yeah, it's more of that. But it is very much a sort of a blue sky, because like nothing really bad is probably going to happen to anybody except the stuntmen maybe are really trying to kill them.
Well, and Trigger Keaton dies, but I mean, he kind of
Trigger Keaton's dead, but who gives a shit? He's the worst. We just wrote a new Trigger Keaton, new to me, because I wrote those books. I ended February of last year, I think, is when I finished those books.
Of 2020?
Yeah.
Damn.
Man, that's how it is sometimes. And so we wrote a new 8-issue story, like for the Anthology X, which comes out, I think, around the same time. I think number 3 is coming out. They might come out at the same time or close to each other.
It's July 7th. Wait, like 8-page or 8-issue?
8-page. It's an 8-page thing for the anthology. Like we did a new Assassination, me and Erica did, and which was great. Like I love those guys. And we did a fucking Dave story for the Anthology X, and that's the character's name. And we did And so it's cool to go back, but it's like entirely a Trigger Keaton flashback story basically, and it's the worst. It's like, man, that guy's the worst, and it's nice to have a character that I don't have to, though Trigger's kind of deep in like the most shallow way. Trigger's whole thing is he's terrible, and you're like, well, why is he so terrible? He's the worst. Like, he hates everybody. But the thing is like Trigger Keaton. The story of Trigger Keaton is that he's so physically tough. He's so like he's the master of countless martial arts that he fears nothing.
Yeah.
He lives a life without repercussions or fears, and he's the result of that is that he's the worst. He says whatever he's thinking because you can't stop him. He lives in in fact, I just wrote Back Matter. I wrote the last interview with Trigger Keaton as Back Matter, and it's like, man, I love this character because like he does things that make sense, but they're so bad. Like, they're the worst things. So it was nice to do a little Trigger Keaton thing, but alternately, one of the characters is the opposite of Trigger Keaton. It's like this is the thing, like, we made these characters. It's like, well, people notice. One of the characters is literally the opposite of Trigger Keaton. She's so tough that everything's fine. Yeah. Like, she's not worried about anything. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
So she's like the mirror opposite. It's like stuff like that. It's like was a lot of fun to do. It's funny because Schweizer. I mentioned something for this character that I thought was really funny because she looks like she was a child prodigy, but now she's like, I don't know, say she's 22 or 23, I don't know, but she looks young. Woman. She's an adult woman, and the thing is, the joke is every time someone calls her girl or little girl, somebody will say she's an adult woman, and there's parts where I forgot about that, and Schweizer still put it in, and it was like, remember you said to do that, and I'm like, oh yeah. It's like we also tried to get like Skippy to say shit as many times as how many times can we get shit? Yeah, how many times can we get Skippy to say shit? Like, little things like that. Like, it's fun, man. And I think I really hope people pick up, because my whole thing is like I try to do funny things but never make people eat them. I try not to like rub people's faces in it. So like little things like that. Like, she's an adult woman. Skippy saying shit all the time. This Tad Skippy thing comes back around at the end. Of course, everything comes back around. Oh man, I love those guys. But Trigger's the worst. He's the fucking worst. And that's part of it too. Like, who cares? Why even salt? Why? And characters keep asking, like, who gives a shit? Him being dead, we're all better off. Like, who cares who did it? They all have their reasons.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, and I'm not saying that, like, there's any value to Trigger Keaton as a human being, but I will say, like, there is a certain level of zen of Trigger Keaton where it's like, there's that line where Miles and Wen, the sixth sidekick, the one who's basically the man behind the investigation.
Yeah, the least traumatized.
Basically, I mean, my read on him is he's basically like Sherlock from like the BBC series in specific, where he's just constantly noticing clues and like trying to find stuff, to the point where Paul calls him one of those smart dummies, which I felt like was pretty accurate. But he asks Trigger about, like, you know, he's like, aren't you worried about not having like a family or love or anything? He's like, sad, lonely, boy, I'm free. I am unencumbered. And I was just like, there's like a certain level of freedom to that man, even though he is a horrific human being. It's an interesting balance for the character.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
One of the things I really liked in the first issue, and this shows in the preview, so this does not count as a spoiler in any capacity, but in the celebration of life, funeral, sidekick press event thing that we meet the characters at, one of the things I really loved that you guys did was you have these inset panels that you show TV guide explanations of the show that each sidekick was on, and where things went wrong with Trigger. So there's like Paul Hernandez, you know, sidekick number 1. It shows his show was martial art, which is, again, just an astonishingly great title. But also, like, that he ended up writing like a tell-all basically about how Trigger Keaton's absolute trash, accurately. But I think that's really smart. Like, I really love how you and Chris ended up doing those. Is just like, this is all you really need to know about their relationship in 2 panels, basically. You know, he's a piece of shit, but this is specifically how that happens. What was the process for you and Chris doing things like this? Because you're the writer and he's the artist, but he's a writer and you're an artist. Like, was it a little bit more free flowy than it might have been otherwise?
I'm gonna say, like, there's like, that's 100% my idea, because I thought it was the clearest way and most visually interesting way to do these characters. I would probably not do anything like that in my book because I'm not quite at the skill level of the people I've been lucky enough to work with. Chris has a lot of good ideas. The car chase in issue 2, where like he's like, let me do a car chase, and I'm like, yeah, dude, do all the car chase. There's a thing he does with a fight sequence in issue 4 where it happens sort of in the panels of the book. That's it. Like there's a lot of form stuff is almost always him, and I give Chris a lot of freedom with like choreography and pacing and all that stuff, because he's going to do more work than I do always. But I think what's nice, Chris would probably be more interesting. He'd probably have more interesting things to say than I would. But I think in regards to doing that type of thing, being as how I'm a cartoonist and Chris is a cartoonist, is that I don't make him do anything that I couldn't do. And I know anything I ask him to do will be better. And he knows, I think he just told me that he's like, oh, well, like Kyle writes to my strengths and I draw to his, which is true. But like there's a thing in issue 5. There's 6 issues. Things in issue 5 where I was like, oh, like this is what I want it to be, and he's like, oh, we should do this and this, and I would never, because it's just too much work. You know what I mean? Like I would never. And Schweizer will volunteer it. But I think it's like I visually know what a book should look like, maybe the worst version of it, which I think is an advantage to me as a writer. It's also frustrating to me as a writer. But for the most part, with Erica and Chris, for sure, like what I thought it was supposed to look like, what I get back is always so much better. But yeah, like we work back and forth, but like I know what it's supposed to look like, and he just makes it look better. I think there was a concern at one point in time in editorial where they're like, oh, this book is too jokey, which is insane. Like the craziest thing you could say to someone doing a comedy book. and Schweitzer's like, he's like, no, he's like, the way I'll draw it, it won't seem over the top. And it's like, it still kind of seems, I mean, I don't know if that's true, but him and Ellerby, Mark Ellerby on Rick and Morty for sure. Mark Ellerby is especially, can really elevate a bit. And it's the thing with Ellerby, I always know which bit it was going to be. Or once it happened, I'm like, yeah, I see, like that's smart. But Chris will always elevate something that I wasn't paying attention to. So he's my best friend. Like we make good books together. I want to make books with him forever. We just have a good balance. Like it's like what's important to me is not what's important to him, my dude. So like the point where I'm very frustrated about a thing, he'll be like, gosh, pal, everything will be okay. You just got to think about the bright side. But then he's like, furious about like a font usage somewhere that he didn't. It's wild. And it's like, I could care less. But it's like, that's the balance. And like I said, we were talking the other day, it's like we're complete opposites, but he said that the one thing where it's like, once it comes to telling a story, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Like we just like, that's the part. And it's like, that's not entirely true, but it's kind of entirely true. But like, we love story. And even if we don't have different, like story, it could be anything. And if you love telling story and you love concocting and you love putting those pieces together and you know how they're supposed to unfold, any story would be a good story,
I mean, I don't know if editorial was speaking to it being jokey from a script standpoint or from a finished page standpoint, but I mean,
editor.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is like, you look at like the funeral scene again, preview, so no spoilers, but you look at that and like it does seem in many ways like a fairly ordinary, this is a thing that is happening. But then you look at like the signs on the wall where it's like God must have needed a little more kung fu in heaven and things like that, and it's just like. I feel like that's kind of like what we're talking about, where it's like the balance where it's funny if you want it to be, but it's also kind of like grounded if you want it to be. It's like it's got the turnaround, the hooch.
Yeah. I think. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to answer it. I think it's a good book, man. I think the characters are great. I think we did a really good job. I sound like it's funny. I don't know if I keep starting each thought like that, but I'm so far away from it. Now Schweitzer's drawing it, but even that's like, it takes a long time, and they're not pushing him. So Schweitzer's sometimes issues get done very quickly, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes I'm not seeing the issues till they're done, which is another story entirely. But it's like I look back on it, and I'm really proud of my pacing for that series. How some big event happens in each book that's different, and all of it moves it along in a way that I think is really interesting. I think the characters are they're tropey, but they're like tropey with like a lemon squeezed into them a little bit.
Oh yeah.
In a way that makes them a little unique. Like where it's like, it's like when we did Assassination, like we knew who people were going to love in Assassination, which is to say Chris Schweizer is Fuck Tarkington. Like we knew who was going to be the star of Assassination. I didn't know Dave was going to be as beloved as he was, but I love all those characters, so I'm glad. And for this one, it's like, man, it's going to be Terry Komodo, surely, right? Like, but who knows? Like, I feel like all the characters have something, and they all have their moments, especially later in the series. The ones that you haven't read yet, they have some really nice moments, I think. I'm real proud of it, man. I'm real proud of that book, and it's like I hope people read it because in the past they have not at the numbers that I would like.
I have just a few more questions on this, but I do want to say I'm a Alison St. Marie guy. I actually think her first extended presence in the third issue is like one of the most amazing opening salvos for a character ever. I think this isn't even an award, but they should make an award for 2022 where it's like the Eisner for best 2-word speech bubble, and it should go to I Defense in the third issue. I don't know if you remember this. What's that?
I Defense, yes.
I Defense, it's perfect. It's amazing. But okay, so you mentioned like the cast and how like they kind of came together and everything. But I am interested in like how you, I know this is a long time ago, but how you and Chris kind of figure out which 6 sidekick types you wanted. Like, were there specific archetypes you aimed for, or was it just you came up with who you came up with and that's just how it was?
I mean, it's kind of the latter. I'm real type A. So Schweizer and I know. So originally we wanted to be set earlier, much earlier. We wanted to be a period piece because we wanted to do we wanted to do like The Rifleman. We wanted to do like Land of the Giants, Lost in Space. We wanted to do like these classic TV shows, and that was one of the. I don't know if we agree still, but like they were like, let's move it back, and we're like, that's fine. So we're like, well, what shows are we going to do? But the collection of characters dictates the story, and that was my job. And I don't think Schweizer, I could be wrong, and I'm not trying to push him out. I don't know if he had much say in the characters per se, but everything was discussed. So even when I say, like, even if it doesn't sound like it's 50-50, basically we've reached a point where I can't do anything without his approval.
I just imagine a lot of what you're doing is riffing, right?
Yeah, but it's like, man. So nothing I do in any book is on accident. Even the jokes aren't on accident, right? Like maybe a joke is a momentary like beat change, but even my joke set up something in this. Like everything's there for a reason. Let me swing back to this too, by the way, because I found out recently like this thing, which is a problem for me, which makes why I don't like editors, because to me it's a puzzle that I'm putting together.
Right.
And I'm putting together not one issue. I'm putting together an entire arc. So for this was like, what's the beginning, what's the end, and then we'll figure out what happens in between. But what characters need to exist? Who do these 6 characters need to be? And some of that was very much like, well, what are the shows going to be?
Right.
And that'll sort of decide, but they all have to be kung fu shows. Everyone has to be a kung fu show. All these little variables. So yeah, it's not like, I wish I could remember exactly the characters, but I know, like I said, if I said, what if one of them, like, my thing with Terry Komodo is like he's a brute. He's a big dumb brute, but he thinks he's smart, or at least he wants people to see him as intelligent, even though he for sure isn't. Or they would see like he's a tough guy, and he's not even that much of a tough guy, really, though he's physically formidable for sure, right? And so I know when Chris went over there, he's like I don't like Terry Komodo as sort of using these big words, because to Chris a brute should be a brute, like that's the trope. And I'm like no, this is great. And very much thinking like that tech show that was on HBO that I just blanked on the name of it.
Billions?
No, where they're
Westworld?
No, they're making computer. There's so many of them where they're like computer programmers.
Oh, you're talking about Halt and Catch Fire? That's on AMC?
I'm not talking about that one either.
God damn it! Computer.
It's got TJ Miller in it. It had TJ Miller in it.
Oh, Silicon Valley.
Silicon Valley. And it's like I like that idea of a character of someone who there's something very charming about and unused. So I was like, no, it'll be like TJ, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
It's very Erlich Bachman. Very Erlich Bachman.
Yeah, he's smart, but he's dumb, but no one likes anyway. So yeah, so it's like so there's some things that I wanted Alison St. Marie to be a little bit more like high fashion-y than she ends up being, and she's not. It's like that makes more sense because she's always kicking butt and she doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
So it all works out. But yeah, I know it's me. I'm going to do most of it because I'm a crazy person. But the arrangement we had, Chris and I have, and it won't work with other people. If Chris says, and Chris, here's the thing, Chris will make suggestions, and sometimes he doesn't know what he's saying. He'll just say things because he wants to make sure that I know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes things change because of that, just because he's sort of not coming at me, but it's like, oh, what is this? And I'm like, no, it can't be that because if this happens. And so that's sort of how the process goes. But I'm pretty sure I was like, this character is this, and we're going to do this with this character. This character is this, and he makes them live. Like his choreography and his acting is what makes everything what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But he lets me do a lot. Schweitzer's such a good storyteller. The Creep series is so good. I highly recommend it. It is kids' books, man, but they're so good. But he kind of gets like I'm the writer and he's the artist, but we're such like a gestalt of personalities and like creativity that nothing happens without the other. So there's some of his like he's chocolate and peanut butter. Sometimes there's more peanut butter than chocolate. Everything's planned and intentional, and a lot of that's because a lot of my favorite series I believed were that way. I just started rereading Preacher, which I haven't read probably in, let's say, 18 years. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's been forever. And I always thought that was the same thing. Like, this is what I do. Like, everything is so thought out. And as I read it now, I can see how that's absolutely not the case. Like, there's a beginning and an end, and he's stretching it out. But, like, I can see how he's sort of kind of just very good at being loose and fast. And I wish I would have known this 20 years ago. Because like, I'm a crazy person. And started as I thought how smart, like how clever this composure was. But he's just very good at moving on to the next thing and making it work. It's like, ugh, I'm crazy because of this book. I'm probably not that book's particular. Nah.
Well, I mean that's it underlines why like an ongoing would be an interesting challenge for you, because it's like you can't necessarily do that to the same degree. I will say I do want to give one more quick element of props involving the characters in the shows and everything. I know that the shows would kind of dictate to a certain degree who the characters are, and like I know that the shows got moved up and they were modernized and everything like that. I will say the combination of the idea of and the script on and Chris's like delivery of it, I'm convinced that Frankenstein would actually be a legitimately huge hit.
All right, so Frankenstein is Chris's.
Yeah, it would. It's a great idea. I mean, like seriously, that is there. I think. I mean, there's like Sleepy Hollow is basically that, except for it's Frankenstein. That's it.
Yeah. We don't talk too much about Frankenstein. That's Frankenstein was his idea. I wrote my original script for it was like ridiculous, and he's like, no, we want to do it like it was like prestige television.
It works.
So I rewrote it to be prestige television, and it made Chris happy, and that's all that matters. That's all that matters to me.
I love it. Okay, well, last question for this. I do want to ask about, like, you have all these action books with like roots in the history of varying movie and TV genres, and like one of my favorite parts in the book was I love how in Trigger Keaton is like how you kind of set up these ideas early on, like the fact that Tad/Skippy has like a catchphrase and you're just waiting for that shoe to drop. But I mean, I kind of feel like, have you seen Popstar?
Yeah.
Like the catchphrase verse? I feel like you're like the comic book guy of the catchphrase verse. I think you're like one of the best in the business at like these amazing catchphrases. Like I honestly think that one of the most heavily, I would say definitely the most cited line that you've ever written is you brought a you to a me fight. I feel like that comes up a lot. Are you a big fan of catchphrase like lines? Is that just kind of a product of the action comedy element, or is that just something you love?
I think it just happens. I don't know what the deal is. I don't like I've never had one that I thought of in advance, really. They just in the moment, it's like I try to say things that people haven't said before that are funny. But I will say I like to think like a lot of my books are sort of that moment in any Arnold Schwarzenegger movie in the 90s, early 90s, where he does make a joke. Like that's kind of my favorite part in any of those movies. How like there's like two moments of humor in every one. And usually it's a bad pun. Like usually it's a terrible pun.
Steam, Bennett.
But I like to think like that's the little microcosm where my stupid books live, is like that moment, because I'm not doing an action comedy. I'm doing an action movie that's funny.
Right.
You know what I mean? But action movies, you gotta have a line, right? But I just think like who, I never know what people are gonna pick. Like I never know. People really like Punch Bowl. He's got punch diarrhea, and their faces are the toilet bowl in Rock Candy Mountain.
Yeah.
There's a couple in Hitman that escape me. I don't know what's going to happen. I just write things to amuse myself for the most part, that are things that I think will sound cool. I have a couple in Old Head that I think are real. Old Head's coming out from Image, by the way.
Okay,
so
awesome.
They're announcing it this month. That's coming out in August. But I think Old Head has a couple. I put a lot of stuff in Old Head. I put a lot of stuff in. I like to. I do certain things where I go, oh, if this book takes off, like this panel is going to be the meme, right? They never take off, so there's no memes. But I think it's kind of the same thing. Like I didn't think that line was going to be the you brought it, you to me fight would be. I loved it, but I made sure I put it in the Kickstarter video because I thought people would need to hear it. I thought people have heard the delivery of it, they'd get it and run away with it. And I don't know if that's the tail wagging the dog or whatever, because it is people's probably favorite line of mine. But I don't do anything on purpose. I mean, stuff like that, like that's dialogue to me is just something. It's like the action. It needs to be very natural. It's like the comedy. It needs to happen in the moment. If it doesn't pop in the moment that I'm doing it, then it's not going to work. Then I have to redo it.
Yeah.
And I've gotten very good at that balance, I guess. But I just try to make myself laugh more than anything.
I mean, Trigger Keaton has a lot of lines that are in that spectrum. I will say, I think my favorite, and again, this is like, if it's a spoiler, it's the most mild of spoilers. The context is really what sells it. But Terry Komodo says, "I'll stop your emotion." And it's not even a catchphrase. It just killed me. It, like that line just absolutely slayed me. And it's just like, partially because it's weirdly relatable. Like that totally sounds like something I would say. I was just like, when somebody's, I don't know, I love it. But I also want to bring up, I mean, you mentioned Old Head. This isn't a catchphrase, but I will say that in Old Head, it has the part in it that made me laugh harder than any comic has ever made me laugh. So kudos to you. It was when Nash Glivin Jr. crosses up a monster and breaks his ankles with Dracula's head as the basketball. And like that was, I feel like a joke very specifically made for me as a basketball fan.
Yeah, listen, as a basketball fan, he 100% does John Starks the dunk at the end of that book.
Amazing. Oh, it's so good. Yo, everybody. I want to take a quick second to talk about the crew over at Bad Idea. Do you like bone-shredding destruction, wanton corporate malfeasance, and reckless use of industrial machinery? Then buckle up, because Bad Idea, the unruly and experimental new comic book publisher, is back with Tankers. On sale in select comic shops now from New York Times best-selling writer Robert Venditti and blockbuster artist Juan Jose Rip. A global energy conglomerate has just solved our impending oil shortage, and their plan is pretty simple. Send a team of contractors armed to the teeth in mech suits back to the Cretaceous period, tweak the trajectory of the meteor that killed the dinosaurs, and give mankind another 500 millennia worth of oil reserves. What could go wrong? Only all of human history, of course. Tankers from Bad Idea, on sale in select comic shops now. And now, back to the show. Well, we're going to close with some basketball talk. Perfect transition point. So, yes. Listeners that don't want any basketball talk,
thanks for being here.
Okay, so I'm an Indiana Pacers fan. You are a Boston Celtics fan.
Former lifelong Knicks fan.
Lifelong Knicks fan. Well, and then also like a surrogate Washington Wizards fan this year by accident. But
this year, last year I can't remember who my number two, but it changes around. Yeah. Celtics.
Who had the more depressing season, Pacers or Celtics?
I mean, I think the Pacers did, honestly. One, because you have to watch that team at all, which is already a burden upon any fan. Says the former Knicks fan. I think the thing is like we did fine. We just like
you're in the playoffs,
which we were always going to be. Like there's no like that's the thing for my team. There's never a question that we weren't going to be like, even when we were sucking pretty bad. We knew we were still going to make the playoffs because we were sucking not as bad as 4 other teams in the league. But man, we had like it was a rough year. Going in, I remember telling my number one basketball friend, I saw some betting site had the Celtics as like a top 4, maybe a top 3 team in the NBA for betting sites to do that. And I was like, there's zero way. There's zero way they happen. They're not going to. This is a 4th seed team. They're a 7th seed team. But they've had injuries and whatnot. I'm like, this is at best a 4th. They just don't have any hype. Like they're losing a lot of leadership and like there's just no way. And then of course everyone got COVID on the team. Everyone got sick.
No depth.
We kind of, the depth is interesting because we're deeper than what the press likes to act like. But the thing is, no one scores. So you're like, well, you have to score to win the game. But it's like the thing is like that second team is a good defensive squad, and they play harder than the starters do. So it's like, I don't know, like the depth is we got rid of Tice, who we love. Like we hate to like. For me and my wife, like losing Tice and losing Baines, it's like man, no one's gonna love those guys. Like no one's gonna love those guys the way that we love them. But you know what? It is what it is. Brown is like, if we still had Brown, I'd be like, what is a great season? We could have played harder. But I don't know. Like I love that team. Marcus Smart at one point implied that there is someone is dealing with some sort of personal problems on the team that is affecting everyone else. And I'm interested to see if that ever comes out. If we ever find out who it is. I think there's chemistry problems with that team, but not on court. I think it's more of like
personalities.
They're young. I think like Marcus Smart's the oldest guy on the team. I think.
No, Kemba or Tristan.
Not by much. They're like 32 though.
Yeah,
like, they're not old at all. Like they're not old. And I think that's a lot. And like for Tatum, but Brown's daddy. Whenever Jaylen Brown is the most important. Jaylen and Marcus are hands down the most important guys, and we lost them too many times this year.
Yeah.
So say Pacers. The Pacers. Sorry for you, man. It's miserable.
Kemba's 31 and Marcus Smart is 27. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, Marcus Smart 27 is not old, man. 27.
That's what I'm saying. They're babies. They're babies.
Yeah.
And they need what they need is for. I know people are like, oh, the reason why Tatum isn't defending as much as he was because he's scoring more. It's like, that's fine. Like, that's T-Mac. That's fine. Okay.
He's still a good defender, though. And like, your season is just single-handedly better than ours because you still have Tatum. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's just. So,
here's the thing, man. Tatum is so good, but he's bad at clutch moments. Kemba last year in the playoffs just disappeared entirely. Marcus and Jaylen are the two most important players on that team. There's no argument. Who will be the greatest player on that team? Tatum's probably LeBron and Jaylen's probably D-Wade, right? But if I had to pick two guys, I'm taking Jaylen and Marcus. Like those are the first two guys I'd take.
I love Marcus Smart. I think he's like a type of guy you want on your team to win a championship. I love Jaylen Brown too, and I think that he actually has a higher ceiling than Tatum. I think the problem is like. He doesn't impose his will as much as Tatum does.
He started to this year.
A little bit. He still disappeared a lot. He's still kind of like phased out of the game a bit.
There's some they can't figure out who daddy is. But when Jaylen, the first 20 games, which I think Tatum was out, Jaylen was daddy, and we were great.
Yeah,
we were a good team, and I was still like, this isn't a top 3. There's no way.
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree. I think Jaylen's smarter, but I think Tatum's learning. And Tatum's 6'10", with crazy arms, and he has no fear. Jaylen's like a dude. I don't know. He took over the mid range this year. Then he stopped doing mid range shots. Like I don't understand. We watched that team for an entire month, only shoot threes, not drive once. And I'm yelling at my wife. I'm like, these guys are not. This is not Golden State. We don't have one good 3-point shooter. We don't have one dude on our team who you're like, that guy's a lights out 3-point shooter. Maybe Kemba, who I bet you shot shit. But they're shooting threes. All of them are shooting threes. And I'm yelling at my wife. I'm like, this is dumb. This isn't how you play basketball. And then they started driving. Like Tatum's like, oh, yeah. And both of those guys found out, if you're aggressive, you get fouls. And that's easier to hit a free throw than it is to shoot a three-pointer. And we were playing really well, but then we just get hurt. And it is what it is. But we're too small. Like, if we played any 76ers, Lakers, although who knows, the Lakers are probably fucked.
I mean, that kind of makes the Nets a good matchup, though, because they're not at least giant.
Yeah, that's the thing is if we had Jaylen, I wouldn't be like we're gonna get rocked because Fournier's playing really well right now. Robert Williams is playing really well right now. I was like, we have a chance against a small team, but those tall teams are gonna be problematic for everybody. Giannis needs to get his shit together. Giannis needs to impose himself because this is his season. It's not his season, but him and Embiid, Jokic, Gobert, these big guys have a huge advantage. And it's so funny that here we are, spent the last 4 seasons being like, centers are done. You don't need a big man anymore. But I
think the Bucks are gonna be better in the playoffs. I actually think the Celtics would have been better if they had Jaylen, because it's like the teams that have top heavy rosters that need less depth are better in the playoffs because they can tighten the rotations, and that just doesn't happen when you have a 72 or 82 game season. I will say, I do think the Pacers will be more promising next year when they have Brad Stevens as their coach, which will be really exciting.
It'll never happen.
Oh, he loves Indiana.
Dude, he's not. Dude, I think if when Coach K retires, I would not be surprised if he went to Duke, and I don't think he's going to any place else.
I don't know. Indiana Pacers, they pay very poorly and have a, they never love going over the luxury tax.
People are talking about firing, like,
fire him. I hope you fire him.
Why would they? You're talking about an X's and O's coach who's never missed the playoffs and who's then had a practice this year. The team didn't have a practice this year, and we're in the playoffs. Like, why would they get fired?
There's some talk about him losing the locker room. I don't know if it's tied to that stuff that Marcus was saying, but I'm just saying he would look great on a sideline for a blue and gold team.
It's not going to happen. Like Danny Ainge is probably in bigger trouble because he picked up some sketchy guys.
Yeah, he's definitely taken a great advantage and turned it into a disadvantage. But I do have to add. Okay, so you mentioned you were a lifelong Knicks fan before. This was like the greatest Knicks year in like 20 years. Like, did you feel any allegiance shift back towards the Knicks at all?
You know what? I always say, like, I feel it's similar to my feelings with like a lot of periods of pro wrestling, is like where I was really sort of a battered housewife, where it's like I'm sticking around out of a loyalty that's not earned anymore. The Isaiah Thomas days were just so bad. I don't know if I can go back to the Knicks as long as Dolan's there.
Yeah.
Just because he ruined what was the greatest basketball period of my life. And I'm loving like these last 3 years, like we've been watching the Celtics and I've been watching NBA like full at 7:00 every night, man. I go upstairs, like whatever I'm doing, like we watch basketball. We do it almost every night. In fact, my wife is like, she knows like it's coming to an end, and she's like, "What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?" Like, I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do. And this is the best time for us because we'll watch every game. Like we'll watch every game that we can. Like literally, we'll watch. I'll be gone for like a week. It'll suck, but no, I'm really proud of them. I'm really glad that Tibbs has sort of regained what he had in Chicago since Minnesota was such a mess.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that the X factor was, what if we add a surging Derrick Rose? Like Derrick Rose was really like the thing that put them over the edge. I think that's a great story. I think Julius Randle being like, let me get better. I worry about Tibbs as a coach just because he plays guys so. I mean, I know everyone says it, but I think Randle played like 43 minutes a game this year or something.
No, it was like 38, but he led the league. Yeah. I think. I love Julius Randle. I've always thought he was like super. You what?
I liked him when he was in LA.
I think the thing that really unlocked him this year is, well, first off, he started shooting like 40% from three.
People around him that could do anything also.
Well, yeah, but the other thing too is like they finally use him as a playmaker, which I think people underrated his passing. It's kind of like Time Lord, but Time Lord's not nearly as good a passer as Randle. But oh, you mean Sharif?
I think those guys are real similar in how like they have a good vision to them.
Yeah, I really like Randle a lot. I mean, honestly, like the Knicks, I feel like are a team that is better than the sum of their parts, and I still think that they're like a player away from being really great. Like I wouldn't be surprised if the Hawks housed them, because the Hawks they have a lot of talent. The
Hawks should have been better this year, and I guess like coaching was the issue for that. I guess. I knew they were. I thought they. What are they? 6?
They're 5. It's 4-5.
They're 5. Okay. I thought they would be higher up, but I think also I didn't really account for Harden coming to New Jersey either. So
right.
Or Brooklyn. Sorry. And I thought we'd be 4th. The Knicks are a surprise though, man. I mean, like there's just no. Tibbs is a good coach, and I as a Celtics fan, as a modern Celtics fan, I get to be like, well, he was with us when we won our last.
Oh yeah, so. He was Doc's assistant, right?
Yeah. Like, as an earlier argument, I would argue that you have a chemistry coach. If you have a chemistry coach, you need a really good X's and O's guy, and that's what Tibbs was. It's just that's your mix. That's what Brad, like, honestly, like Brad is such an X's and O guy. And I think he's so smart. Like I've seen less of it this year because I think there's so many young people that he had to kind of play. But in the past, like the last 2 years, the way he would adjust, especially in college, the way he'd adjust in college was just brilliant. I mean, if we were down, we're like, wait till halftime. It's all going to be different, always. And some of that's now too, but we've always been like, third quarter, we get our ass whipped. Fourth quarter, we always come back. Something happens between the third and fourth quarter where he figures something out. But I think there probably does need like some guy who's really like, doing more of the chemistry stuff for those guys than he's capable of. But I don't think Pop's like Pop's not doing chemistry stuff. You don't think?
Oh, he's totally Pop is like famous for doing his like dinners with players, where like they go out for fancy wine and stuff.
The players though.
What's that?
He's taking the players to those.
Yeah, well, no, I mean that's like they always have their family dinners, and like even like former players are welcome. So they're like, I don't know. I remember Thiago Splitter when he got traded to the Hawks. He came into San Antonio, and he was like, they still took me out to dinner. It's like that's pretty cool.
Well, he could do some chemistry stuff, I think, for sure, Brad. I think it's tough for him to be a leader, but I think if you're the smartest guy in the room, it's tough to be like, why aren't you just listening to me too? But he's not a jerk about it. I think he's anything but. And that, because you know the joke last year in the bubble was Tatum would do something stupid and Brad would be like, that's great, keep doing it. And that's true. He lets Tatum do basically anything he wants. And I don't know if that's trust or if it's we need to let Tatum do whatever he wants.
Tatum takes some bad shots at the end of the game. Bad shots.
He's the worst. And I think, like, I wish I had that degree of confidence in anything, but I'm also so glad I don't have that degree, like that misplaced confidence in anything.
I'm trying to think of what the equivalent of taking a 30-footer when you're down one at the end of the game, like they did against the Pacers, would be for a comic book creator, but I'm not sure what that would be. I don't know. But, okay, last question for you. Who do you have for the title?
Dude, this year's so tough. If I would not have ruled LA out, even though I think last year was an asterisk. I don't think they would have won. I don't know if they would have won last year if it was a real full season, and that's unpopular.
I think they would have.
I think they probably would have, but I'm saying I'm not going to say, because the thing is that the Lakers proposed something for the first time, which what if we were bigger than you, but we're still very good, right? And you have LeBron, huge X factor, and it worked. They were bigger. That's what they won. They were bigger, and they had LeBron.
Yeah,
listen.
I mean, I think the thing. Okay, wait, let me make a quick Lakers point. I think the thing about the Lakers is that, and I brought this up the other day. It's like they were bigger against the Warriors when they had Drummond on the court, but that's bad big. You have to be the right type of big. Anthony Davis and LeBron are playmaking bigs. Like they're great passers, and like if you surround those guys with shooters rather than fucking Andre Drummond, like it's great. But no offense to Andre Drummond, but he is like a clogged toilet out there for them. It's just killing them. And like if they replace him with like even like a league average shooter, like if Reggie Bullock was on the Lakers instead of the Knicks, I mean, like he's not a game changing player, but that might be a game changing player for the Lakers.
I'd say what hurts the Lakers the most is that they're reliant on Caruso to do anything ever.
Caruso's good.
Not good. He's fine. He's fine at best.
He's like the third most important Laker, or him or KCP, which is a problem. But at the same time, they won the title with the same circumstances last year.
But I think like they're so big. But here's my problem. I adore Utah's team. I love it. I love Denver's team. I love it. Will they win? I just can't see it. And the thing is Joker's fire tested. Like. These last 3 years, like Joker's gone to so many seventh games and he's won them. He's fire tested. They're big too. Michael J. Porter is something else. I just can't see it. It's like the same thing. Like I can't see the Sixers. I just feel like the Nets are going to do it because they're the one I want to not win.
Yeah, I think it's probably Nets or Lakers are the most. They have the highest ceiling out of anybody. I don't see the Sixers.
The Lakers are going to do it. I think. I don't know. They don't look right. They don't look right to me.
Yeah.
It could be the Sixers. I don't know. I like Phoenix, Utah, Denver. I would love for it to be any of them. Or the Celtics or the Wizards. I mean, but no way. So everyone there would be plane crashes for that to happen. So I'm pulling probably for the West for the first time, as long as it's not the Lakers or the Clippers, because are bad guy teams. Lots of bad guy teams.
Yeah.
Most likely. Which is Brooklyn, the Sixers. The Sixers are a less bad guy team this year. I don't know what happened.
Honestly, I like most of the Sixers. Ben Simmons, I don't always like, but I like Tobias and I like Embiid. And I don't know. The funny thing is the Nets are actually pretty fun to watch. And I like a lot of their like supporting guys. I don't know. KD annoys the shit out of me.
Kyrie Irving is a pox on this league and a pox maybe on humanity.
Oh my God.
KD is the most mentally weak great player that's maybe ever played the game. I will say
he's going to tweet about
this. What's that?
He's going to tweet about this.
He probably will. In the past, the Houston Rockets have been a top bad guy team. Lakers, Clippers, Houston, Sixers. I I'm forgetting someone who's been like a historically bad guy team in the last couple of years.
Boston Celtics?
Harden? No way. Are you talking about my sweet boys out there just playing the best they can? They're just children. I will say Harden is one of my least favorite players. Seeing him with the Nets has been kind of great. I feel like Harden in Brooklyn is the same as Russ to me in Washington, is that you're seeing a different version of them that's just way more likable as players.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but man, I hate Irving.
If it was Clippers Nets, who would you pick?
Nets.
Yeah.
Here's what's going to happen Nets. The Nets on paper should beat everybody. They should beat everybody. On paper, they should beat everybody. The problem is, it's a bunch of mentally weak dudes. And I don't want them to win. I want them to fail so bad. So those three guys have to look in the mirror and be like, man. Yeah.
I'm like an anomaly when it comes to basketball. I kind of like everybody to a certain degree. I mean, Katie grates at me, but at the same time, I do enjoy watching the Nets play.
Good.
I'm trying to think of any team that I straight up wouldn't want to win. And what's that?
It should be the Knicks. You're doing it wrong. If you're not hating somebody, you're watching this game wrong.
I have mellowed out, as in like when I was in the 90s, like I hated the Knicks almost as much as I loved the Pacers, and they were like monsters to me. But now I'm just kind of like, you know what? I kind of pity the Knicks. I hope the Knicks do well, and I kind of like every team. I'm trying to think of it like if there's a team I would really not like to win. And I don't know if there is. You know, it's weird. It's like Utah, I feel like I should like more. And they have a lot of likable players. They're just kind of boring.
Yeah, but so is you know what? They're more exciting than the Spurs teams that they rolled out for all those years.
The Spurs played a beautiful game, though. The Spurs were such good passers.
Dude, I'm telling you, like Joe Ingles alone is worth the price of admission.
Yeah, he's a great passer. And he's like...
Everything about him. He's mad. When he mouths, it's real fun. He's just a joy to watch. And you never know what you're going to get, which is my favorite kind of player. My favorite kind of player is give me someone who's going to play really hard, but be wildly inconsistent, and might punch somebody. Those are my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
If you're anything that's close to John Starks, like Marcus Smart is my second favorite player of all time. I know 1 and 2. They're locked in, and they're both the same. They're hard defenders who can't really shoot the ball, but will shoot the ball, and they might punch you.
Yeah. I feel like the great thing that might be coming is the fact. Wait, what did the Clippers end up as a 3 seed? Shit.
I don't know.
They did. Okay, never mind. I was gonna say I really want to watch the Jazz and the Clippers again because Joe Ingles wrecks Paul George's confidence, and it's absolutely astonishing. It's just he gets in his brain, and it's unbelievable. I don't hate Paul George. A lot of Pacers fans hate Paul George. I mean,
he's mentally weak too.
And Joe Ingles makes sure to remind him of it endlessly.
I feel like Phoenix is and I love CP3. They're the least interesting team for me to watch.
I love them. They're so fun. I'm rooting for. Okay, I want the Suns to win. That's my pick. They're not going to win.
They will not. I would love for Denver to win because it's such the opposite of the story the league's been telling for so long, and because Joker is who doesn't like Joker? Joker's the best. Man,
if they had Jamal though, it'd be pretty interesting.
But MJP, Michael Porter Jr. has become a completely. Not completely different player, but he's I read an article the other day. It's look how he's just like Klay Thompson. He's he's just like.
His jumper freaks me out. He jumps so high when he shoots his threes. It's he's shooting from 15 feet in the air and he's shooting downwards or something.
I feel like without Jamal, you'd hate to see them win and it would be hard. I do like Facundo a lot. I like him a lot.
Campazzo's fun.
I don't think they have a backup point guard behind him, which is probably a problem.
Is it? I think Monty Morris and Will Barton are coming back.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, I love Will Barton. I'm a weird super fan of Will Barton.
I feel like it's going to be a team. It's going to be a team who I deem a bad guy team is almost guaranteed to win. It's going to be Nets versus Denver, and they're going to just roll them probably or something crazy. I'll be very happy about it.
I think the Nets have the best. If I had to pick Nets versus the field, I'd probably pick the field. But I think the Nets have the highest chance because their ceiling is just so high. At the same time, they've played 15 minutes together, so we'll see.
And they also lost almost every time they played together. I think if I had to pick a team, if you pick one, and I'm not picking a winner. That's my thing because I don't think they'll win. I don't think at this point that I can be I think this team's going to win. It's just such a weird season. Last year was the same, but I feel if you pick one, I pick the Sixers just because I feel on paper they had they're the LA Lakers last year. They're big, but they're still skilled. They have better shooters than they've had in years. The coach is letting us figure out how to use guys. I think the Sixers are probably the biggest problem, but it's I'd love to see what the Sixers record was against Utah, and I bet it's not great. I bet they lost.
I don't know. If I remember correctly, the Jazz had the best record against the top teams of anybody.
Jazz are deep, man, deep and good,
and they have so many shooters. It's insane. Like they had I don't know, something like 6 players that shot 5 or more threes a game and made 40%. I love Bogdanovich. I mean, I think he's like, they have a lot of dudes who have like sneaky, nasty streaks.
They had Carlton. What's his name? Jordan.
Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson
is he's Lou Williams. Like that's the type of guy who would come off the bench. He's a treat, man.
Yeah.
When Conley's good, I mean that's an all-star level play. This year it was come on. You should have had it before this year. This year is like it was a bullshit. Anyway, but Conley's great when he's great. But Don, Gobert, Clarkson, Bogdanovich, when he gets mad, man, he's trouble. Ingles can get hot at any moment. They're a deep team. They brought back Derek Favors, who they should have never let gone. They were really good when they had him because he does similar things to Gobert, but worse. Paul Millsap? Didn't even say Paul Millsap's name. Paul Millsap, man.
Millsap's on the Nuggets, though.
Oh, who do I think of?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they got Royce O'Neal. They got
6'4" power forward.
Yeah, he is. Oh, I mean, yeah, but that stuff's new. I mean, like I love Bruce Brown on the Nets. Bruce Brown is like 6'2", and they play him at center. And I'm just like, this shouldn't work, but it's genius. I don't know. I mean, it's gonna be a really weird year. I mean, I could see basically any team winning the title. The Nets are probably the most likely. The Lakers are probably the second most likely. Even though it doesn't feel like the Lakers should. I feel bad for Suns fans though. I know a lot of Suns fans, and I think they're gonna have a tough time against the Lakers.
We'll see. I feel like the Lakers, and I'll be wrong. Here's the thing: is like there's guys that just don't want to win, or there's teams. I never turned on LeBron per se. I don't love the Lakers move, but I don't like AD. I think he's mentally weak too. The Lakers looked like they're not right to me.
Oh,
I feel like the Phoenix is right, and Phoenix has a better coach. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Oh, you're slandering Frank Vogel?
I'm not slandering. I'm just saying like. Monty Williams is a better coach.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
This year, and I don't know how much coaching you do on a Lakers team, honestly, or on any LeBron team. I don't know how much coaching you actually do. So I don't think that's a slandering Frank Vogel.
I will say, I want to say one quick thing about it. I don't know how much coaching you do either, but when I was watching the Lakers-Warriors game, I saw when somebody was bringing the ball up the court and LeBron was on like the wing, he points and does this, which is a play call for Vogel for years. So he is at least still calling play calls. So there is that. He's doing a little bit of something because I recognize the Vogel hand signals still to this day.
All right. I'm sure LeBron whispered something as he. I don't know. I don't want to do that. Here's my thing. Like last year, CP3 for that OKC team was one of the greatest performances. I think
it's so fun. And
him having an actual team, like Booker's going to have a moment. It's like maybe this is Booker's year, man. I think LA just doesn't look right.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Also, it's so funny to like Lakers. They shouldn't have won that. They shouldn't have won that game against Golden State. But their last 3 plays were so good. And Golden State was like, we only have maybe 2 good players, and it showed. But it's so funny that Lakers team was like, look, we can beat these small shooty teams. That's what we're built to do. And then they ran against the team, and Golden State should have beat them. Like, this was the team they were, like, because it's like, yeah, you were made to beat shooty teams, but you weren't made to beat Steph. Like, no one's made to beat Steph. And I think it's like, one, LeBron tried to get that flagrant call when he got patted gently in the face by Draymond Green, which they didn't call, which is the best play call all year. It's the best ref call all season that they didn't call a flagrant foul when they could have, because they love calling flagrant fouls.
Yes, they do.
But at second to last play, Jordan Poole whipped on a shot. That's fine. He's like, if you're relying on Jordan Poole, like, you know, but
I think he's
when
good.
They were coming, he's good, but if you want him to win the game for you, it's not going to happen. I mean, that's not what that situation you want. But the next play that they got to tie it, Steph's bringing the ball up, and the entire Lakers team was like, you're passing it. They were all up on him, and it's like, you know what? That's fucking smart. And it's like, if they win, they earned it with just those 2 plays. LeBron hit that killer 3. They whiffed, which is not Lakers' fault. But then they were like, anyone but Steph. And that's what you got to do, anyone but Steph. And they won. Good for them. So it's like,
I'm going to make my official pick. I'm going to pick the Lakers, and it's just because I think their defensive ceiling is the highest. They easily could lose in the first round. But I mean, like that last possession is exactly what we're talking about, though, because it's like, AD was on Draymond, and then you had, I think, KCP on Steph. And then basically what they just did was like, they double team Steph off of every single one of them, and AD can recover off of Draymond on that. And then, like, their best defensive lineup is it's really hard to score on, even with Steph. Nobody's got Steph besides the Warriors.
That was, they called the timeout. Steph crossed the half court line.
With like 1.9 seconds left. It was insane. Like, that was Kerr should have called timeout way before then, but
he was eating their guards all night. It's just a matter, at that one, LeBron was right there ready for it, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope the Lakers don't win. I hope the Sixers don't win. I hope Brooklyn doesn't win, and I hope the Clippers don't win. That's who I'm rooting for. All those teams not to win.
All of them to not win. I want the Suns to win, or the Nuggets. I like the Suns and Nuggets. But all right, Kyle, that's all I have for you. We can keep talking about basketball forever. Best of luck with Trigger Keaton and with all those teams losing in at some point in the NBA playoffs.
I'm sure they'll lose. Don't win.
Thank you for taking the time.
And thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with cartoonist Kyle Starks. You can find him on Twitter at the Kyle Starks, and in the upcoming The Six Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton at Image Skybound. Love Off Panel, want to support it? Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts today and give the show a rating and review while you're at it, but 5 stars only. You can also support the show by backing on Patreon. Find the show on Patreon at patreon.com/offpanel. And when you back it on there, you get early access to each week's podcast as well as weekly content and more. Want even more? Subscribe to my subscription comic site, Sketched, at sketch.com for long-form articles, interviews, and the rest of the site's content, and its members-only forum. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by liking on Facebook at /Sketched, that's SKTCHD. Follow on Twitter and Instagram at @SketchComic or following me at @SliceFriedGold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Elsa Chartier, Luke Nakashoji, Elliot Metz, Dr. Luke, Scott Hazelwood, Scott Buwan, Michael Tung, Canadian by Proxy, Johnny Cannon, Zach Thompson, Bradley Rader, Carl Troy, Megan Marsden, Brandon DePillis, Patrick Brower, Declan Shalvey, Dan Garino, Josh Williamson, Adam Freeman, Ben Wild, Brian Klein Q, SB, Antonio Offen, Nick Bennett, Daniel Whitfield, Scotty Young, Susanna Polo, Jeff Weira, Reed Hinkley Barnes, Mario Tiambang, AbductedTheComic.com, Andrew Carita, Matt Mahoney, Charlie Chu, Stephen Hall, Pensacola Pop Comics, Kim Eslin, Philip Myra, Kristen Sheldon, Kenny Porter, Chris Pacello, Torrin Grunbeck, Fuzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Waltz Comics and Books, Carl Mizell, Danny Ollie, Paul Slates, Akil Wilson, Alex Dimitriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Leona Kingus, Wesley Gift, Sean Kirkham, Alistair Ross, Julio Anta, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Reinwatt, Vita Ayala, Tara Ferguson, Dave Slusher, WMQ Comics, Akil Kokachi, Sean Pinello, Ken Heidelman, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, Nick David Kelly, Robert Wilson IV, Nick Polito, Brendan Fletcher, Jonathan Nielsen, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Adam Bogart, Matthew Taylor, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendricks, Steve Anderson, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Adam Highfield, Fiona Staples, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Demonakos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Off Panel's theme song just for the show. Check out their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.